Hey everyone, welcome to Anarchapulco TV. We're here with a special guest who's going to be a main stage speaker at Anarchapulco, which is the premier Liberty event. It's February 10th to the 20th, 2020. So just right around the corner. And we're very fortunate because this gentleman is very knowledgeable in the crypto space. And so we're going to learn a little bit about him and what he's going to bring to the main stage so that you guys who are watching this can benefit and perhaps even prepare and get the most value from his talk when you arrive there in February. So before we begin, his name is Mr. Paul Rosenberg. And Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Great. So some of the people may not have seen your anarchist interviews you've done with Jeff Berwick, the founder of Anarchapulco, but you've been on there, I think, 3 times. Some really interesting subject matter there. But for some of the people who haven't seen those shows, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of who is Paul Rosenberg?
Oh, my. I guess a kid from Rogers Park in Chicago, and I ended up going into the construction industry and very quickly into philosophy, economics, theology, psychology, and very quickly into cryptography back in, say, the middle 1990s.
Nice.
And right now I run Crypto Hippie, the privacy service, and I write a monthly subscription letter called Free Man's Perspective.
Nice. And is it all about cryptography or freedom in general, or what's the kind of the thesis of the Free Man's Perspective?
You know, Free Man's Perspective really has a real wide area of subject matter. We go a lot into history, we go into science, we go into pretty much every area where I can find something that's really interesting, that's important, and that has never been covered before, which is, you know, obviously a tall order, but we're doing very well with it. And then Crypto Hippie is obviously a company that essentially sells cryptography and privacy service. It's a multi-hop, very well done VPN.
Oh, wow. Very, very interesting. I myself not super knowledgeable about all that. However, I've been attending Anarchapulco the last 5 years, so I got to see a little bit about it. And in your interview with Jeff, you mentioned the cypherpunks, and I think that's very interesting. You said Satoshi Nakamoto is probably from that group. So perhaps you can tell the audience maybe what the cypherpunks are and why you think that Satoshi might have come from that group.
Okay. The cypherpunks were a group of techie guys, bright young men usually, who began to meet in the late 80s, just a few of them, Timothy C. May, Eric Hughes, John Gilmore, I think, and several others, began to meet in living rooms, essentially, in the very late 80s. And then by 92, perhaps, they had a mailing list on the very young internet. And fascinating stuff. That was just a little before my time, but there was a lot of activity. These are the guys who gave PGP to the world, who gave text encryption to the world. Before then, it was a munition legally. It was like if you gave your friend a copy of an encryption program, it was like sending him a surface-to-air missile, as far as the law was concerned. And through a very interesting and very cool story, these guys got encryption out to the world. One of them just about went to jail for it. It was very close. It was touch and go. So these guys did all that and began doing a lot of other things. It was an incredible group. And the reason I'm so certain that Satoshi was one of these guys is that everything that Bitcoin became, every part of Bitcoin, I think every part, at least almost every part, came off the cypherpunks list and came from cypherpunks. I suppose we had Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which predated the cypherpunks, but Win Diffie is pretty much one of our guys, as I understand it. I've never met the gentleman, but I know he gets around, and he was essentially the same type of person. But BitTorrent, which is a key component of Bitcoin, came from the the list.
Mm.
Proof of work came from the list. Reusable proof of work came from the list.
Mm.
All the pieces that are critical to Bitcoin came from the cypherpunks. And the way Satoshi talks is we do have certain emails and postings from Satoshi. He's a cypherpunk. There's no question about it. So yeah, which guy was he? Well, I don't really know. But he was one of those guys, no question in my mind.
Yeah, well, what you mentioned in the previous interview, which is such an important fact for some of the new people out there who just learned about crypto, maybe it's got your first wallet, is that there's no head to cut off, right? So naturally, through the Federal Reserve banking system, these criminals who just print money out of thin air, they don't want to have a competitor. And so if you create a competing currency, it's even outlawed. Like you can't even use other currencies in many states because they want the monopoly on that. They know how powerful that power is to print money and basically own the economy by increasing the money supply and decreasing it. This is how they can create busts and booms. And so how important is it that Bitcoin doesn't have a head? And you also mentioned that mathematics can't be cracked with force or can't be cracked with violence. So could you share a little bit about that? So those two really important topics.
Sure. Easy about math and cryptography. It's a math problem. Cryptography is just a math problem. You can't point the gun at it and say, do it the way I say. It's math. It doesn't care. Now, in terms of the head that can't be cut off, that's crucial. And that's why Satoshi built Bitcoin. This was right in the aftermath of both Napster and eGold. I don't know how many people remember eGold, but it was a very cool system where you had some gold in a vault and electronically you traded ownership of it. And you could send your friend, $50 worth of eGold or $500,000 worth of eGold and just click, 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 and the money was transferred anywhere in the world that you wanted it to be and wherever your other trading partner was. And it was cut down by the U.S. government. And Napster, as everyone remembers, was cut down by the U.S. government. And Satoshi very clearly says he wants to build something that has no head that can be cut off because that's the vulnerability that is killing all these new freedom systems or free money systems or whatever. And that's why he maybe she,
right.
Maybe they, we really don't know, could be any of the above.
Right.
Satoshi realized that with these components, I'll use he for simplicity, these components that he had, he could put reusable proof of work, he could put in the sharing of files with BitTorrent or that process, he had Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and the genius moment was when he figured out how to put them all together and create the right incentives with the mining programs and so on. It was just a genius maneuver. And while Bitcoin isn't perfect, there are issues here and issues there, and that's fine. We're not expecting perfection, but boy, this was a genius moment. And it was because he needed something with no head to be cut off.
And someone like yourself who's been in this kind of cryptographic world for so many years, over 2 decades, it sounds like, you spoke to Jeff and said that I couldn't imagine Bitcoin being as big as it is now, and it's a miracle, and you were saying that if somebody had predicted the future to you back in 2010 and said, this is what's going to happen, you said, nice story, but actually it's happening. And I wonder if it's too late for the big banks to get involved, or they're running around scared. But what do you think about the future, and what do you think their moves might be to counteract this kind of private, competing, decentralized currency that they can't control?
Well, they're trying all sorts of things at the same time and trying to find one that works. Obviously, there is no head to be cut off of this thing. So they're having difficulty with that. They're trying to create bottlenecks. They've been hammering exchangers very hard, trying to hire anybody who could. And I'm really sorry that anybody took this job. I'm sorry, don't do it. I don't care what they're offering you. To help them try to track payment addresses.
Mm.
And they're trying everything they can. They keep talking about putting out some type of GovCoin or central bank
Fed
coin.
yeah.
Fed coin, yeah. They keep talking about it, and they may try, and then another group of them is trying to just scare everybody away, and they're trying lots of different things. How they'll do with all that is an open question, and part of it depends on how much else they have to distract them. If we have a real recession in the next however many months, years, whatever, that will distract them, because a real recession is something that only those of us of a certain age have lived through. The one in 2008, 2009 was unpleasant for many people, but it wasn't a hard recession like the last one, I guess, was 1981. That was a real recession, and your neighbor was out of work.
Yeah.
And it's a lot different. And if that happens, then they're going to be busy putting out lots of other fires, and we might find a little bit of free room to maneuver.
Wonderful. Well, getting back towards the event that's coming up, I'm curious, you are going to be on the main stage, which is exciting. Have you attended the event before, or will this be your first time as a speaker?
No, I've never been to Acapulco at all, or any of the events.
Oh, great. So what are you looking forward to? I don't know if you've obviously known Jeff for many years and had conversations. What are you looking forward to bringing to the community or learning from yourself, and maybe some of the topics you might be sharing from stage?
Well, what I'm looking forward to is just the people. Like I said before to Jeff, the whole thing is a miracle to me. To walk into a room where there's hundreds or 1,000 people who get this stuff and who care about it and who are trying to move forward, this is miraculous.
Yeah.
This is something that we just, none of us, I don't think, ever seriously, expected. We knew it was a possibility. We kind of knew we were right. Or we did know we were right, but you can be right and the rest of the world can be wrong. Right. And that condition can continue for quite a long time.
Yes.
So I'm just looking forward to seeing the people. What I am planning to talk about, circumstances may change, but what I really want to cover, and I think is really important, is what happens if we win? What happens if all of these things that we dislike and reasonably dislike, what happens if somehow they go away? What do we do then? How do we arrange things? How do we act? Are we prepared to be the adults in the room?
Right.
These are really big, important questions, and right now that's what I'm looking at talking about.
Yeah. Well, that's a real possibility if the money system and scam, support structure that they've been leaning on for over 100 years and longer in many other countries, if that thing crumbles, then it is that power goes away. Now it's on the individual, and that's what we're really excited about, because this is our 6th year now. And I was there in the beginning. There was 150 people, and then I just learned about Ross Ulrich at that time. I said, man, they put this guy in jail for setting up a voluntary exchange. Well, he became a threat, to the whole establishment and the war on drugs and the prison industrial complex. And so they made an example out of him. So hopefully, as Bitcoin increases in value, there'll be opportunities to get that guy out of there, somehow, because what they've done to him is just terrible, so.
Oh, it's just evil what they did. And I was at the trial.
Oh, were you?
Oh, yeah. Well, not the whole thing, but I was there for part of it.
Yeah.
And it was so much worse than you imagine it would have been. It was just horrific. They just railroaded this kid and sentenced him based upon crimes that he was never tried for. Never. It's just, you can't do that. This is the United States. You've not. Yeah, well, they did.
Right. And my understanding of the case, just my amateur looking into it, is that they found him because he was anonymous, right? He was an anonymous person, but then somehow he put his email address out there and said they found him. Was that correct? Or how did they actually find him from being an anonymous website?
It's actually a little more complicated and it requires a long discussion to answer that question. I'm sorry. If you want to really know, go to freeross.org, which is their website, and find the Horwitz report on how the FBI supposedly found the server, which is essentially they turned on all the illegal surveillance of the NSA on it. Now, they'll never admit that, and that's not provable as so far, but that's what happened.
Right.
And then they did something called parallel construction to essentially mislead the court on where the evidence came from. But find the Horwitz report, and it's in there.
Yeah, no, that's a great reference there because yeah, who knows what they did? They're definitely a bunch of liars, a bunch of criminals. And, you know, the good news is that the truth is coming out about who's really coercing people, who are the people who are immoral and unethical. You know, it seems to be the state who just pulls money from our bank accounts or from our paychecks or, you know, just demands these things. So I'm curious, what got you interested in the cypherpunk movement or the cryptographic technology back in the 90s and or 80s? When was it that interested you and intrigued you?
Well, I pretty quickly, as a fairly young man, became interested in, I guess, to use a broad term, philosophy. I didn't really think of it that way at the time, and I'm certainly not a fan of Plato and that type of stuff. But history, theology, psychology, all those things were important to me. I got interested in free market economics very early, but not because it worked as an economic system, because it was a moral system.
Nice, yes.
Because trading is voluntary and moral.
Right.
I mean, free market economics worked for practical reasons too, but that wasn't my primary interest. So I got involved with all that, and then somehow, 90-something, I stumbled across cryptography and the fact that public key cryptography was available. Strong cryptography was available, was usable, was perfectly suited to the internet. And with it, we can wall off space, virtual space, not physical space, but still space. We could wall it off. And to use Tom Paine's words, it's in our power to create the world over again.
Right.
And that is what dragged me in. And I haven't been out since. Right.
Well, that's really important because you know, doing what you've been doing for so many decades, have been a visionary, you know, in your own right, because many people stuck in the system through the compulsory school system, the controlled media, the propaganda is so deep, you know, they know exactly the triggers for our subconscious mind and how to, you know, distract us and intrigue us and confuse us. And so it takes people like you and Jeff Berwick and the other speakers who are going to be there on stage and people who've gone before us to show us a world, you know, where we can create a world that we dream of and where there's voluntary relationships and morality is a topic. And, you know, I went to a public school and university. I never had these conversations or topics either in my, you know, various, you know, political science classes. It's all a big game, and we're the pawns in it, apparently. So it's great to hear about the professionals like yourself who are helping people get out of the system and protect their assets, it sounds like. Is that what the crypto hippies about? You said security and helping people?
Yeah, we protect their data. You know, everyone knows that everything on the internet is stolen, whether it's from governments or from companies. It's actually both, and they're all one big complex. They all, you know, share data, and
right.
we protect people from that. We use, you know, encryption. We run essentially a mix master for data, an anonymity network. We do all sorts of, you know, traffic crowding and padding and all the fancy stuff. My partner, Jonathan Logan, is a wizard.
Excellent. Well, we're excited that you're going to be joining us here in February. And I did see that you have a book that you wrote. So maybe that would be something that the viewers could read to learn about more what you're doing. What's the name of the book and what's the thesis of your book?
Well, I have several.
Yeah, go ahead. Share the titles of your books.
The first one that was really on the crypto stuff that kind of talked about things not unlike Silk Road and Bitcoin and so on. It was called The Lodging of Wayfaring Men. And That's a good one to read. The big novel that I wrote just a few years ago is called The Breaking Dawn. I also have a history book called Production versus Plunder. And really, I would say people should sign up for the subscription newsletter, because we have we're going on 110 issues, and there's a lot of really heavy duty stuff in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find more about you, your newsletter, and maybe these books that they can invest in for their own selves?
Sure. Freemansperspective.com, just the way it sounds, and go to Amazon, put in Paul Rosenberg, you'll find my stuff, and cryptohippie.com.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. Speak with Mr. Paul Rosenberg. Stay up to date on when he's going to actually be speaking during Anarchapulco in February at anarchapulco.com. Get your tickets. We do expect many people, so if you're interested in some kind of workshop or some specific service, sign up. There's going to be a lot of people. There's a mass awakening that's happening. We have the crypto world, the health world, the education, media, so many exciting things, so many things to be optimistic and hopeful about. I can tell Paul is optimistic, as am I, and Jeff and the whole team here at Anarchapulco. So stay connected with us. Find out more about Paul if you like, and we'll see you in just a few months, right around the corner at Anarchapulco. And this is going to be our 6th year, so I hope you'll join us. Come down to the beach, warm water, warm sun on your face, and awesome people, as Paul mentioned. It's all about the people, and you guys are part of the solution. You guys are the visionaries, as are you, Paul. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in Mexico. Look forward to speaking more with you.